We have the FDA, the IRS, the EPA, FEMA, and many others functioning autonomously and unchecked with the full force of the federal government.
It's a government of, by, and for the bureaucrat. It really is a government that's out of control and that threatens our liberties every day.
There's a concern right now that the FDA has been influenced by Big Pharma.
Are we going to be forced to consume GMOs and chemically laced food and milk with recombinant bovine growth hormone? Are we going to have to eat animals with antibiotics? And the answer is you already are.
You could be violating laws you don't even know exist. We need to plan a march on FDA headquarters with a list of all our demands.
Bureaucrats effectively taking control of the way in which we choose to manage our own health.
The FDA is obviously following drug company instructions. And that's really the basic problem that we have here in America.
If they implement all the power they already have, we will live in a food fascism world.
It's almost guerrilla tactics. It's very threatening and coercive and intimidates.
The process is broken and in bad need of repair, and the American public is at risk.
The FDA is truly a rogue agency being run by rogues from industry, government, academia.
The drugs that are approved in this country are not always approved based on scientific data. They're approved based on who has the right political connection.
It's obvious that the Food and Drug Administration should be subjected to a real house cleaning by outraged families who've lost their loved one.
There are many drugs that the Food and Drug Administration has approved that are unsafe, at least too unsafe for the FDA's own medical reviewers to agree that they should be on the market.
Rather than have confidence that drug approved by the FDA is safe and effective, we now have to wait for millions of people to take it and to see what kind of reactions they have in the real world.
Vioxx has killed at least 60,000 Americans. Increase in heart attack risk was over 500%. And yet the drug company making Vioxx covered that information up.
Where there's criminal activity by executives of drug companies, they frequently get away with paying a fine and have no major disruption of their enterprise.
They're spending $6 million a day on lobbyists in Washington, D.C. alone.
FDA receives 40% of their budget from drug companies. They're hired guns, and they're out there serving the best interests of these companies. They do not represent the American public.
The FDA, in my opinion, has probably killed more Americans in this country than all the wars that the U.S. has ever fought combined.
How can it possibly be that a branch or a division of this government is not beholden to the Constitution? This is a government of tyranny.
I think the time is coming when Congress is going to have to hear the voice.
9/10 of all laws made by the United States are not the product of those we elect who work here, but the product of those who inhabit the Independent Regulatory Commission, who are unelected, unaccountable to the courts, the Congress, the American people.
It's interesting that in the Declaration of Independence, they listed the acts of tyranny by King George III. It was stated that King George has created a multitude of new offices and sent swarms of officers to harass our people and eat out their substance. Now I ask you, what is the difference between King George and what he was doing to the citizens of this country and what the U.S. regulatory agencies are doing to them today? And the correct answer to that question is there is no difference.
The system is so broken that it can't be repaired. It can be pressed. It can be shaped by serious amounts of pushback. But ultimately, if we're going to protect our lives and our health, we have to completely redo the system. Right now, the regulated industries, food and drugs, totally control the regulatory process.
Well, the question always arises what to do. Should we write our congressman about the transgressions of the FDA? Of course. Make some noise. Make some noise. Make some noise. The only thing I believe that will save this country is for the executive and the legislative branches of government that have power, use that power to dismantle or strictly eliminate the illegal activities of these regulatory agencies.
We're not going to solve the problem by incremental reforms. The system is too corrupt from top to bottom. We're going to have a mass uprising, hopefully mainly nonviolent, of the citizens of this country. I think we're going to have allies all over the world when we do this. We're going to have a second American Revolution because we do not have a democracy, and the type of authoritarian system that we're living under right now is not just a threat to our economic livelihood. This is a threat to our lives, a threat to our children, our grandchildren. This is a threat to human civilization and the fragile web of life on Earth. It's a matter of life and death.
It is the rule rather than the exception that abuses take place. And that's why we're killing our country. That's why our country is in such dire straits. And we won't be able to save this nation unless these scoundrels are eliminated and unless people come into office to replace them who are dedicated to serving this country more than they are in serving themselves.
When we call Congress, we have a couple 100,000 grassroots activists, when they call Congress and talk about these issues, they need to be well informed and understand what it is that they're talking about. So the most important thing that people can do is educate themselves, get the facts straight, educate themselves, get the facts straight, educate themselves, get the facts straight, and get in touch with those that really can help to push our agenda in Congress and otherwise.
And one of you, two of you, no. Millions of you? Yes. How do we get millions of you? Because you send out the action item to your friends. Because you send out the action item to your friends. Because you send out the action item to your friends. Click, click, click. We call it riding the freedom mouse. And when the globalists, when the regulators, when the industrialists are faced with that kind of pushback, they step back every time.
Simply pointing out the illegality and the tyranny of the actions of these regulatory agencies affects nothing. We need to put pressure on our elected officials in Congress and in the White House to put restraints upon these regulatory agencies. That's the only thing that will save us.
Citizens, even if they don't know this, we have the ability to pass our own laws. In large numbers of municipalities and counties, we have the ability to fire these corrupt politicians. It's called recall.
These things are happening. It's not a question of whether we're debating about whether people have sold the country down the river in order to benefit themselves. They have done it.
And we're seeing a situation in which reform right now is really essential. Well, now there's a series of bills that would literally change health and food freedom and justice in this country. It's important to remember that there are people in Congress who are willing to challenge the FDA.
The public has got to keep their congressmen reminded. They have to remind their congressmen that they're not going to tolerate legislation being passed or FDA rules being put into effect that deny them access to their dietary supplements. It's an ongoing battle. It just doesn't stop with one victory.
Basically, you have legislation by default. To downsize the government, the Administrative Procedures Act needs to be amended so that the final application of any new regulation needs to be actually approved by an actual vote of Congress.
What we need is a regulatory system where the drug manufacturers are penalized both in terms of fines and in terms of responsible people going to jail.
We actually take these executives from drug companies to court. we actually require that new drugs are more effective than older drugs. And when we have some nutritional factors that play a key role in the prevention of diseases, the government should step in and finance research.
The movement needs to get better organized. The FDA, they got teams. They're organized. They got all this information, and everyone else is disorganized because they're isolated here and there, and they don't communicate. There's no central battle to plan a counterattack against this.
We're going to have a second revolution down the road, but we need to start getting organized and very strategic about it right now. Two sectors of the movement need to come together. One of them is the alternative health sector, the people who see very closely how Big Pharma and the FDA are a serious threat to public health, to our survival. And the others are it's the movement for alternative food and farming. Once we come together, we have millions of people. We have the capacity to enact our own laws. We have the capacity, if we need to raise millions of dollars in statewide campaigns.
Consumers have to let their voice be heard so that the hundreds of billions of dollars that the drug companies earn every single year does not allow them to perpetuate a monopoly on the healthcare system.
I'm a lawyer, I'm used to the courtroom, and to be able to win a case because thousands of people lend and show public support is just one of the best feelings. I mean, that is making this system work, and we need help.
We all need to come together and increase our ranks because we really need to build an army.
Just going to Congress, we're not even getting results. We need to confront our oppressors directly and then get the attention of the national news media. But, this has to be well organized.
When we think carefully and when we stand their process on its head and use it to our advantage, we prevail.
Here we are today with the greatest threat coming not from foreign foes, but from domestic ones, but who are actually filling the elected offices of the United States government and also the unelected ones. So it is our duty to reassert our sovereignty, to take back the power and the ability that we once had to ensure that those rights are protected once again.
Our country was founded to protect the Constitution and the Bill of Rights. They didn't give them the mechanism to where a president and a Congress can merely pass a law that is more powerful than the Bill of Rights or the Constitution. No, they said you had to jump through hoops. You have to amend the Constitution to change it, which we all know is probably a 10-year process at the most. They wanted to make it difficult to do that. And yet we blindly now are passing laws that render the Constitution and the Bill of Rights worthless documents. And I think that's where the trouble comes in. We're not following the official documents of how our country is to run. And if you don't do that, then what do you stand for?
There's really only one answer. Why do you sell your government away? Why do you sell the rights of people away? Why do you abandon this country? Well, you do it because you're a traitor. Because you value yourself more than your country. Because you value your own economic future more than you do the welfare of the American people.
The only reason that things don't change is because we didn't become activated enough to cause them to change. But it's our planet, it's our health, it's our future, and it's our choice.